In this video, we'll be looking at creating and finding customers. Also, we'll be looking at some basic permissions that should be aware of from a management standpoint and then an accounting standpoint as well. When looking at our screen, traditionally, more often than not, you're probably going to be starting by looking up a company. So going to Explorers and explore companies. If you really know that the customer doesn't exist, you can always start at new company. But generally, best practices are to see if the company is already in the system before going down the path of creating a new customer. When we load the Exploring Companies screen, we'll notice that we're really only getting Test Company and Walk-In, and that's because the filter is set for clients at the moment. Most of your database is going to be set to prospects. The difference between the two for control is prospects mean they haven't created an order inside of control yet. Client being they have created an order inside of control with you. I would actually recommend for anyone who is highly doing order entry or lookups during the initial stage, have both of these checked. So what you can do is you can save that option as your default. And that is a user saving setting save, not a system setting save. So each person should do that if they want to do it. But maybe I'm more on the vendor side. So maybe what I would do is check my vendors and not have clients and prospects checked. And then it would adjust my screen so I just see the vendors inside the system. One thing to note is on the screen it is limited by default by 40, so you could type in 107, you could hit load more or load all if you prefer to scroll through your list. However, most people are probably going to use a search criteria to limit the list back, so if I type in test, it'll go find test company for me. If you're not quite sure what the company is called, there is a wildcard in the system, which is an asterisk. So if I put it at the end of test, that means go search for something that starts with test. If I put the asterisk at the at front, so asterisk TEST, that means it's looking for test at the end of the name. And then if I bracket it one on either side, it means test just exists somewhere in the search field. I can also search by primary contact, the salesperson, and phone number, which are general search criteria for company information. I can also control what my columns look like if I want to make adjustments to my column choosers. So if you click on a field and drag it into the blue space, it will actually take a column off your field. If you want to add certain data to it, you have a right-click menu that gives you quite a few options. You can print reports from here. You can create new jobs or estimates from here. What I can do is I can come to column chooser and I can add data that is relevant to my experience with this customer and add that to my list so that I have that on my view. Now if I do that, if I change a lot of columns around, what you might want to do is come to explore options and save your grid columns so that next time you come in you're on your next session that it's still there. The other thing I can do from this screen is if I am maybe pulling a marketing list, I can export this grid. You would want all the companies relevant to the export loaded, but I can export to Excel. And this is relevant for any Explorer screen in the system, orders, estimates, contacts, or companies. If I want to open or look in and edit the company, I can double click and it will open it. I can also use the right click open option and it will pull up the company information. And then I can edit on my right hand toolbar. Name is required. Usually in most systems there's a permission in system setup that says company names have to be unique. So if we're dealing with like a franchise or multiple locations, you're usually going to make those specific based on something like location or address or something of that nature, so you know one from the other. When you're adding a contact, you'll notice that prospect and client are grayed out. The system does this change for you automatically. So anyone who has 0 order history in the system will start as a prospect. The moment they create their first order with you in control, it'll automatically change it to a client, with the exception being of vendors. Instead of being a prospect, I can uncheck it and just say this is a vendor, or they can be both. They can be a client and a vendor in the system. Salesperson is generally a required field, so who's the main contact for this company? You have some marketing information as far as like what's their industry, what's their origin. Not required, but handy if you're going to use any kind of marketing capabilities inside of Control. You do usually require billing address and shipping address. As long as it's not different, we'll pull from the billing address. The reason they might be separate is maybe their billing address is a PO box versus their shipping address is their physical location. At least one phone number is generally required in the system as well. You do have a drop down here where you can change the label to identify what type of phone number that is to the business. Tax class is also a required field. This is the taxes that, or tax rate that will be assessed for this business. This would also include anyone who's tax exempt. So you're usually going to have something like non-for-profit or like an exempt account in here saying that they are tax exempt. Additionally, if they're tax exempt, we have a couple other fields. What's their tax number? What's their tax exempt number or expiration date? Are they tax exempt in all states or just certain areas? You can track all of that against the company. Down at the bottom, we have our flags and notes sections. Generally the same concept. The main difference is flags will actually pop up when you interact with the company. So you'll get a little pop-up screen in companies, orders, estimates, basically anywhere you can assign the company to something. Reasons for it might just be informational, but it might also be warnings. If this person, for some reason, isn't paying their bill, you might want to put a flag on their account to tell sales to not enter any more estimates or invoices for this particular person until they pay their bill. Both of them are generally the same. You just enter the area that you want it to be, and then you can start typing. One little trick of the trade that we do like here in this system is there is a timestamp option here, which is Control A, which gives you a date timestamp. And then usually I would say include your name prior to your note. That way you know when this note was, and then you can kind of come back to it later and see if it's still valid in the system as well. The main difference with notes is notes is really just going to exist on the company level. It's not going to be a prompt. It's not going to jump out at anyone, but it is more of an internal notes about this company if you have any questions. The other required field, or another required field, is a contact. Every company has to have one contact, and that contact has to be the primary and billing contact. Primary meaning the person who does the most business with you, billing being the person who accounting would contact for payments. Now, a company can have multiple contacts, and the primary and billing can be two separate people. But if you only have one contact for a company, that person has to be both primary and billing for the business. Some of the required fields that we're looking at here on a contact level is first and last name, email address, and at least one phone number. Phone number generally comes over from the company account, but this is your opportunity to add any direct lines or cell phones or anything like that that you want to track on this particular contact. We do allow for some additional information not required to the contact, but you can set up an ACH type payment. If you're using credit card integration, you could also store a credit card against the contact. If you're using the shipping integration, or even if you're not using the shipping integration, if the customer has shipping accounts of their own and they won't be processing the shipment through your accounts, you can store that against the company record. You can store any notes that you want about this particular company. Here, activities is anywhere this contact has been used. And then user-defined fields hasn't been very heavily used by Excelsius to this point, but in general, this would be any custom information you want in the system about a contact that's relevant to Excelsius, but not so much maybe to other control customers. They can be checkboxes, date ranges, text boxes, drop downs, and they can really be anything that is worth tracking against the contact. The last required field for companies would be the payment terms. It is usually going to have a default, but you would want to come check it to make sure the default is relevant to that company. The financial tab in general also allows for credit balance and a open credit account. Credit account being we're going to give them a line of credit of $1,000. Credit balance going to be more of we issued a refund for something, but we didn't physically give them the money back. We gave them a credit that they can use on later orders. You can also make adjustments to that credit balance, so you can zero it out, you can give a refund, you can increase it or decrease it. We have an activities tab as well, so tracking anything about this particular company, if it's edited, if a contact's edited, if there's a note against it, if there's an activity against it, any of that information. You can unselect everything by hitting the red button and then choosing what you want to see. So maybe we want to see the company edits on the screen. So it helps just kind of filter that information. If I want to go back and see everything, I can check the green checkbox. Really helpful for notes, activities, going back and seeing, as long as people are leaving relevant notes, going back and seeing why something was edited or why something was changed for it. Could even be used to track payments or just general notes if you're having issues with the customer or need to leave anything behind on the company record. Documents is a storage system. It allows for you to store anything you would like against the company record, recurring artwork, tax exempt documentation, emails between sales and the customer. I would generally say that this is not an area that is relevant to a specific job or a specific estimate. This would be an overall area. Not to say that they wouldn't be linked or that there wouldn't be a benefit to have custom job specific data here. It just it doubles up your storage if you're going to store on the estimate and the order as well. But if you need a central location for a company, this is a great place to house that. Also, maintenance contracts or anything like that that you have, or contract pricing or anything that you've kind of come up with for the company can be stored here. Now, if the contact is or a company is a vendor, you'll see a vendors tab. If they are not a vendor, you will not see this tab. But this is where you can set your payment terms, your shipping methods. You can see what parts are attached to that vendor here as well. Obviously, nothing's attached to Test Company at the moment, but you could add a part if you needed to this vendor. And then the last tab being user-defined fields again. Again, we're not really heavily using this. It does look like we may have a commission rate UDF that we created for you in the system, but it's just any additional data that you want to track against the business. We also in the top right corner have some kind of the basics or the general ideas of customer specific pricing. Pricing levels are percent based, either increases or decreases to the price of all jobs for this company. Standard being just charge normal pricing. Promotions are traditional discounts, dollars off or percents off. Job standard is normal pricing. And then to this point, Excelsius isn't using pricing plans, but that is kind of the higher end or more advanced options when we start talking about customer specific pricing. You would create pricing specific to this customer on every single product in the system, and then apply their pricing plan to their company record. So that's an overview of editing a company or using a company. Now, a new company is not much different than anything we just saw here, except that you're just really filling it in. So if we go to new company, required fields are still going to be company name. What type of contact are they? Who's their salesperson, if relevant? What's their taxes, if relevant? Um, what's their billing address and their at least one phone number? It doesn't have to be a primary number. They need to have at least one contact, first, last name, generally email address and a phone number. They have to be the primary in billing. And then they would need their payment terms in order to create the account. Now, some of those permissions are controllable in system setup. I would talk to Julia or David if we want to make any adjustments to what are the default required information. Speaking of system setup, if we go take a quick look, this is permission based, so not every user might have access to the screen, but you have quite a few options available and quite a few different things to choose from. If they're relevant to the business, again, reach out to Julia or David, and they can make adjustments to the company permissions. The other side of that is accounting setup. So you have setup, accounting setup, and this is where you're going to find your options like your payment terms. So you can add to this list if you need to for some reason. So this is vendor and customer payment terms area. So you have your cash customer, net 15, net 30, net 60 or 90. You also have some reporting capabilities. So invoice message would traditionally show up on the estimate and the invoice as far as what are their payment terms and any messages you want to give them about that. And then you have your statement terms in the next 4 boxes. So when they start hitting these areas on their overdue bills, what should be the message on the statement that we show to the customer. The other relevant thing here would be tax classes. And we have a lot of them already pre-set up, and not that you might not have more of them, but really you should just be picking from the list in the company record. But if you're curious as far as what is the rate, you can come in here and you can see what the rate is for the different areas. And some of them will be just state, some of them will be state and county. Like your exempt here would be a tax exempt instead of any kind of rate. So you can make adjustments here as to what is your default tax class, what are the rules, and then what are the rates for that particular company. That completes the tour of adding and finding companies for the most part. The next step of that would maybe be dashboard instruments. However, they do tend to be a little bit straightforward. If you have any questions setting up your dashboard, we probably should really talk about those individually. But you do have a company contact option here. Most of it's built in your Explorer screen. And then you can use your right-click menu, which we looked at a little bit earlier for really quick information. Like here's your statement report. Here's the payments they're running. Oh, I need to create a new job. Let me start a new job for them. That type of actions available on your dashboard instruments. Maybe the one other thing on the instruments that I didn't really, or explorers that I didn't point out is I really like sub explorers, meaning maybe I want to see what orders are in the system for this company. I can have a sub explorer and I can highlight the company and I can see what the data is for that. So I can get a quick snapshot of their orders or their estimates or their contacts. So basically anything that would make sense where there's a link or connection that test company is selected, I can use sub explorers to get to that second layer of data. And that is also available on dashboards as well. If you have any specific questions or anything that wasn't really covered on today's video, please reach out to Julia or David and we'll either get you answers or we'll get you another video. Thanks. Have a great day.